There's something strange that happens to people born under the sign of Scorpio. People look at you and feel something. They can't quite put their finger on it. It could be fascination. It could be a slight discomfort. Most of the time, it's both at the same time. And you? Have you noticed this? Because there is a huge difference between being feared and to be respected. And Scorpio lives on that edge in a way that no other sign can sustain for so long without collapsing. But here comes the part that almost no one talks about openly. Scorpio isn't intense by accident. It's not complex out of spite. It doesn't carry unnecessary weight. There's a profound astrological logic behind every characteristic of this sign, including those the world calls vices. And that's exactly what this video is about, because they have behaviors that in any other sign would be a red flag. They would be alarm signals. They would be the kind of thing a therapist would ask them to work on urgently. But in Scorpio, the universe seems to have given a special pass, as if there were a cosmic permission, a silent contract between this sign and the forces that move existence. And today, you're going to understand not only what those 5 vices are, you're going to understand because they exist, because they are part of its structure, and because trying to eliminate them completely might be the biggest mistake a Scorpio can make. Stay until the end, because the 5th vice is the one that will really get you. Addiction 1. Obsession. Let's start with the obvious, because sometimes the obvious is the most underestimated. Obsessed Scorpio. It's not an exaggeration. It's not a figure of speech. It's literal. When something enters a Scorpio's radar, a person, a project, an unanswered question, an unresolved injustice, that something begins to exist at a frequency that cannot be automatically switched off. Most people can put a matter in a drawer and close it. Scorpio doesn't have a drawer. It has an entire room dedicated to it, with its own lighting, with a filing system, with regular visits at 3 in the morning. And the world says, this is addiction, this is unhealthy, this is a lack of balance. But wait, have you ever wondered why the world's greatest researchers have psychological profiles that border on obsession? Why the scientists who changed the course of human history slept less than 5 hours a day thinking about the problem they were solving? Why the artists who created immortal works described the process as something they couldn't put down? Obsession, when directed, is not weakness. It's a driving force. And Scorpio received this engine with a different setting than the other signs. Pluto, the planet that rules Scorpio, knows no middle ground. Pluto is the planet of total transformation, of symbolic death, of the dissolution of what was, so that what needs to be can exist. It is a planet that operates in the depths, in the mud, in the roots, in what lies beneath everything. So when Pluto rules a human being, that human being can't operate on the surface for very long. Obsession is Pluto's way of making you go deep, always deep. No compromise, no draft, no reduced version. Now you might be thinking, but not all obsessions are healthy, right? No, it is not. And here lies the nuance that separates the Scorpio who uses this vice to their advantage from the one who is destroyed by it. There is obsession that illuminates, and there is obsession that consumes. The kind of passion that shines is focused on creation, discovery, protecting those you love, and resolving something that needs resolving. It's the obsession that makes you the most reliable person in the room when the matter truly matters. The kind that makes you study deeper, love more fully, and work harder than anyone around you. The version that consumes you is the one trapped in the past, in what wasn't, in what was done to you, in what you can't prove but feel in your core that it happened. This version doesn't move you, it holds you captive. And you know what's interesting? Scorpios can distinguish between the two. Deep down, they know. The problem is that sometimes the second version takes on the role of the first. It seems productive, it seems necessary, and it stays. But the addiction itself, that ability to go deep, to not let go, to not be satisfied with a shallow answer, that's something the universe left here on purpose. Because the world needs people who don't give up until they get to the truth. Addiction 2, control. People feel uncomfortable here. Scorpio needs control. And this need is no small thing. It's structural, it's constitutive, it's almost respiratory. Control over the environment, control over the information that circulates, control over who gets close and who stays outside, control over how situations unfold, even from afar, even almost invisibly. And the modern world hates that. We live in an era that venerates lightness, letting go of things, releasing control and trusting the process. And there's some truth to that, yes. But when this discourse meets Scorpio, there's a problem. Why ask a Scorpio to let go of the controller without understanding? Because he needs that control. It's like asking someone who almost drowned to stop swimming near the shore. There's a story here. There's logic here. Scorpio, at some point in life, sometimes very early on, understood that the world is not an entirely safe place, that people don't always say what they feel, that what seems stable can turn upside down without warning. That trusting too much, opening up too much, showing too much can cost dearly. So control was born as protection, as emotional intelligence disguised as strategic coldness, as a way to ensure that if the ground falls away, you already know where you'll land. Is this an addiction? Yes, but it's also acquired wisdom. It's a calibrated radar. It's the ability to perceive power dynamics before everyone else, to read an entire room in 30 seconds, to know who's with whom, who wants what, and where the fissures are, even when no one is openly showing anything. The problem of controlling Scorpions arises when they go from being a tool to being a cage. When the desire to control the environment becomes the need to control people. When strategic reading becomes manipulation. When I need to understand everything becomes, I can never relax. But here's what the universe sees. Scorpio was placed in the world as a guardian of profound transformations. And profound transformations don't happen in disoriented chaos. They need a guiding hand, someone who can see what others don't see and not panic in the face of it. The addiction to control is, at its core, a form of cosmic responsibility that this sign carries. When channeled properly, it creates leaders who protect, therapists who know how to hold the space without collapsing, strategists who transform crises into turning points, fathers and mothers who raise children who feel truly safe. Letting go of all control at once isn't Scorpio's goal. The goal is to learn to distinguish what needs their firm hand from what can exist without it. Addiction 3. The long memory. Scorpios don't forget. It's not resentment, or at least it doesn't start as resentment. It's memory. It's an internal archive of disturbing precision. Do you remember what they told you 10 years ago? Do you remember the tone of voice? Do you remember the expression on their face? Do you remember what happened before, what happened after, and what the person who he said it, but he didn't say it with words? And remember, above all, who appeared when the ground was giving way and who disappeared at that exact moment. For most people, the past fades. The colors fade, the details disappear. It's a survival mechanism of the nervous system. You couldn't live carrying each moment with the same intensity it had when it happened. But Scorpio does carry it. And the world calls this not knowing how to forgive. Holding a grudge. Not being able to let go. But let me ask you something. Do you think intuition exists without memory? Do you think a Scorpio can read people with that depth without having a rich internal database of patterns, behaviors, and stories? Scorpio's long memory is what fuels Scorpio's intuition. Every betrayal that wasn't forgotten taught something. Every broken promise catalogued a pattern. Every time someone showed who they truly were, in words or in silence, it was recorded. This file isn't bitterness, it's accumulated learning. The problem, and there is a problem here, is when this pattern starts to be applied indiscriminately. When a new person pays for the mistake of someone who came before, when you start seeing danger where there is none because the past is being projected onto the present. This happens, and when it does, it's exhausting for you and unfair to the person who's by your side right now. But the solution is not to erase memory. It's to learn how to nurture it. Recognize, is what I'm feeling now from the present moment, or is it from 2012? A long memory, when properly documented, makes Scorpio the kind of person you want by your side for important decisions, because they are not fooled by appearances. They don't believe in fleeting versions of character. They demand consistency before trusting. And in a world that sells image instead of substance, that's an uncommon gift. Vice 4. The intensity that has no average volume. Scorpio doesn't have a more or less attitude. This is what confuses those observing from the outside the most. When you love in a way that's frightening. When you hate with a consistency that other signs rarely maintain. When you work towards a goal, you put everything, literally everything, into its service. When you decide something is over, it's truly over. There's no let's see, and when does it hurt? When does it really hurt? There's no anesthesia either. There's no I'm fine either. There's no pretending it's over when it's not. The world calls this an imbalance, an excess, drama. But think about it. Would you rather live with someone who feels everything only halfway, or with someone who, when truly present, is fully present? Scorpio, when choosing to be involved in something, brings real presence to it, not a cut-down version. Not participation with reservations, presence. The problem with unregulated intensity is the energy cost, because living at maximum frequency all the time consumes energy. It consumes Scorpio first and foremost, and it consumes the people around them who aren't equipped for that level of depth. Some Scorpios learn early on that they can't be fully present in every environment, and this creates a kind of double inner life. What they show and what they keep hidden. What they expose and what no one will ever see. This division is what makes Scorpio seem mysterious to outsiders. But for those who live on the inside, sometimes it feels like loneliness. Because when you feel with the intensity that Scorpio feels and the world around you operates at a much lower frequency, it can seem like no one will really be able to keep up with you. That's not true, but it's a real feeling. And it's important to name this because the intensity of Scorpio, without an anchor, without at least one or two connections where it can be whole, can turn inward. And when the intensity of Scorpio turns inward with no way out, it burns. The addiction to intensity needs a channel. It needs art or purpose or deep love or work that truly matters. Something that can handle the volume without asking you to turn it down. Why? When do you find this channel? Scorpio creates things that last, loves in a way that leaves a mark, works with a dedication that seems supernatural, and the universe knows this. That's why it allowed this intensity here. Vice 5, destruction. And we've reached the 5th one. The one I told you I was going to get you for. Scorpion destroys. I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about something much deeper and much more real than that. Scorpio has an ability that other signs rarely possess. The ability to look at something that isn't working, a relationship, a version of oneself, a pattern of behavior, a belief that has become outdated, and to end that cleanly. Sometimes brutally, but definitively. Where other signs try to fix what can't be fixed, Scorpio puts an end to it. Where others postpone the difficult conversation for months, Scorpio has it, and has the whole thing, not the polished version. Where others move forward with half-hearted conviction, carrying the weight of the past on their shoulders, Scorpio sets the past ablaze and rises from the ashes. This is Pluto operating at full capacity. And it seems like an addiction because it hurts. It seems destructive because it removes. It seems radical because it has no gray area. When Scorpio decides something is over, it doesn't leave habitable ruins. It leaves clean land. And the world watches this from the outside and asks, how do you do it? How do you just switch off like that? But that's the wrong question. The real question is, what did Scorpio go through before reaching the point of closure? Because Scorpio doesn't end things easily. It doesn't end without trying. It doesn't end without carrying on, without waiting, without giving chances that almost no one else would give. Scorpio's closure is the end of a long process, not an impulsive decision. And what happens after it closes? Renaissance. This is the most underrated thing about Scorpio. The symbol of this sign isn't just the scorpion, it's also the phoenix. It's also the eagle that flies above everything with a vision that others don't have. Scorpio has the ability to symbolically die and be reborn as many times as necessary. No manuals, no guarantee of success, no safety net. It only took the conviction that what was there no longer served its purpose, and the courage to let go, even without knowing exactly what comes next. Think about how many versions of yourself you've left behind, how many beliefs, how many relationships, how many identities that once defined you and today no longer make sense in your life. Other signs get stuck in these transitions. They grieve the version that remains. They long for what was familiar, even when that familiarity is crumbling. Scorpion crosses, not without pain, never without pain, but it gets through, and each time you cross over, you arrive at a place that is more genuine, cleaner, more whole. Scorpio's addiction to destruction is, in essence, an addiction to authenticity. A refusal to continue being something that is no longer real, just to avoid bothering others, just to maintain appearances, just to avoid having to deal with the discomfort of change. And what about a world full of people living outdated versions of themselves, afraid to change? This isn't an addiction. This is rare. Now that you know the five, one thing needs to be said clearly. The universe did not give Scorpio these vices as punishment. It's not bad karma. It's not a burden you need to redeem. It's not proof that you're too difficult, too intense, too complicated for this world. It's equipment. You received obsession because the world needs people who don't stop until they get to the truth. The need for control arose because the world needs people who can hold structures together when everything around them is crumbling. He received long-term memory because the world needs people who aren't fooled by second chances from those who don't deserve the first. It gained intensity because the world needs people who truly feel, who truly love, who truly care, who truly show up when it matters. And he received the ability to destroy because the world needs people who don't perpetuate what is useless, who don't pass on nameless wounds, who don't teach the next generations the same broken patterns just because it's easier than ending them. Scorpio is not a shadow sign. It is a sign of depth. And depth is frightening because most people have spent their entire lives on the surface. They don't know how to swim deep. They don't know what they'll find down there. So when they see someone diving without fear, they react the way almost every human being reacts when they encounter something they don't understand: retreat. But what about those who stay? Those who don't back down? They are the ones who change with you. They are the ones who learn from you. They are the ones who, years later, will look back and realize that the most real thing they experienced was through contact with someone who wasn't afraid to be whole. This is Scorpio's legacy. And before I finish, I want to leave you with a question. Which of these five vices do you most recognize in yourself? Not what others point out. What do you feel it when you look inside yourself without a filter? Because the answer will tell you where your next level is. The next ending. The next rebirth. Scorpio always knows, even when they pretend not to know. If this video touched on something real, leave a comment below telling us which of the 5 vices resonates most with you. And if you know a Scorpio who needs to hear this, forward it. Sometimes the right message reaches the right person.